What's up, guys? Welcome to NEEK, which stands for Nerd/Geek. And yeah, I just finished watching through the show Cobra Kai a couple days ago. It came out a while ago on YouTube Red, but I did not want to pay for YouTube Red. But luckily, it came to Netflix recently, so I watched through the first two seasons. So this is going to be my review for season 1 and 2. And they dropped like a special teaser for season 3. So at the end, I'm going to do a reaction and thoughts on that. So it's kind of like all Cobra Kai stuff in one video. So let's get started. First, some background information about like going into this with Cobra Kai, of course, being like a spin-off to the Karate Kid franchise. I have seen only the first Karate Kid movie, and I'm a big fan of it. It's just a really fun 80s like sports movie, teen movie that I just really do like a lot. But I have not seen any of the sequels, so I can't really talk about that stuff. But, let's get started in my Season 1 review. Season 1, I really loved this season. I thought it was really great and way better than it should be. When I saw, when they announced the show, I'm like, oh, this is going to be stupid. This is going to be so bad. They're just going to, try to get a cash grab. But it actually ended up being really good and actually building on the Karate Kid, making the Karate Kid better. And I actually think this first season of Cobra Kai is better than the Karate Kid movie. Both are really great, but I think this one is actually better. So kind of going into why. One thing I have to point out about this is the pacing, I think, was really well done. It went by and felt like, pretty fast and stuff, but it never felt like too rushed, and you feel like you get to spend a long time with every sort of thing within this 10 episode, 30-minute episodes. Runtime for the season, I thought it worked really well for this specific story. And also, whenever the episode ends, you're like, oh, the episode's already over? But, in a good way, you're like, oh, man, I wish I had more and stuff. Wanting more, but not feeling like what you got isn't enough, kind of. I don't really know how to explain that. Also, it does a very good job of feeling 80s and having the 80s nostalgia, but mixing it with the modern teen elements at the same time, and it doesn't feel like cheesy doing either, which I think is a great approach to do for this show, because like the Karate Kid, they want to make it for teenage audiences, but then also, because there's a lot of Karate Kid fans from the 80s who grew up with it, they wanted to have that too, and I think they balanced it really well, and I think both people, if you're someone who grew up with the Karate Kid movie, you'll enjoy this. But also, if you're just someone who just likes these sort of more teen stuff, then you'll also enjoy it for a teenager now. And talking about some teen stuff, I'm not talking about the terrible teen shows like that. Actual good teen drama is what this is. Also, I just love the whole approach they did for this show, where to try to make every character kind of seem gray and not black or white. No one's really good or truly bad. But I instead of doing the more route where every character is, instead of focusing on the negative aspects of the character, every person is bad, they focus on basically, all characters are good, but they just have a couple missteps and problems throughout the way, which I think is a lot better way to approach this, because it makes all the characters likable instead of all the characters being unlikable, and you want them to be able to pit away their differences and become friends. Well, besides a couple characters, there still are a couple characters here, some of the high schoolers that are completely, the bad, people in it. But generally, all the main characters who have the main conflicts are, more in that gray area. And I also love how it uses a lot of misconceptions to cause drama, instead of, one character just completely being, there are some examples where a character just does something wrong or bad, and you definitely do see them, but I like how they also use these misconceptions and stuff that make the things be more real and still make the characters seem as likable as they are while still creating that drama. And man, this show is hilarious, especially the interactions with Miguel and Johnny. You got Johnny, who thinks he's still in the 80s. He thinks life is still the 80s and stuff, and he's trying to act like a cool guy from that decade, the 80s. And the other side, you have Miguel, who's acts like it's actually the right decade as it is, and he's also like a nerdy teenager. So you got like a modern nerdy teenager versus like someone who still acts like they're an 80s teenager, bully sort of guy. So those clash a lot, and you have plenty of hilarious interactions there. Some are kind of with Johnny not understanding like modern stuff, and some are also like with like things that are outdated that Johnny says, like, oh, you can't, like Miguel is like, oh, you can't say that, that's sexist and stuff, which are just really great. And then you also some other great humor aspects playing with stuff from the original Karate Kid. They're not afraid to like poke fun at a couple things about the Karate Kid and stuff, which I think is great. And then the characters all around are really strong, especially Johnny, Daniel, Miguel, and Robbie. I think those 4 characters kind of like the main focus. Well, and then you also have Sam, who I thought is a pretty good character in there. But I like what they do with these 4 characters specifically. They turn Johnny from just a high school bully into a really well-developed character. I love how you see how Johnny sees Daniel as the bad guy, and you see it from a whole new perspective, and see that the Karate Kid from a whole new perspective. As you see, Johnny sees Daniel as the guy who ruined his life. And like Johnny kind of being a guy who peaked at high school, Daniel's the one who kind of ruined his peak in high school, as he took away the 2 most important things to Johnny, Allie and like the karate championship. And I think they did a good job at balancing with Johnny, like where he's not the perfect guy and he makes mistakes and stuff, but then he still is likable and you want to see him succeed and be a better person. So I think they handled Johnny extremely well. And then you see how Daniel isn't really a perfect person, and you kind of can see how, like, in the Karate Kid, if you're watching it, you could see he almost could turn into the bully. And he's kind of like a tiny bit of a jerk. And he has that a bit in his personality, but because of Mr. Miyagi, he didn't. Mr. Miyagi helped him to go to another path. And that's kind of like you can show with Johnny, who didn't have Mr. Miyagi to go to another path, so he went to become a bully. And it's kind of like, so you kind of also see how, since Mr. Miyagi is dead, it's like Daniel trying to figure out how he moves past without Mr. Miyagi, and it causes him to do some bad things and stuff and make some more mistakes because he doesn't have Mr. Miyagi there, which I think creates this really interesting concept as you have Johnny being a better person and Daniel kind of being a worse person. It makes some really interesting conflict between them two. So yeah. And then you have Miguel, who's like this nerdy kid who's the underdog kind of like guy, but they pair him up with Johnny, which makes this whole new dynamic because Cobra Kai now has the underdogs with other people like Aisha and Eli/Hawk. So you know Cobra Kai went from having the people who did the bullying to have the people who get bullied. But Johnny's still teaching them like they're the people who get bullied. So it makes for this like really interesting stuff. Like Johnny's trying to teach the people like these methods when they're normally the people who are like wouldn't do that sort of stuff at all. But then you also see how Cobra Kai is kind of helping these kids because like Eli, he becomes Hawk and he has a lot more confidence and stuff through Cobra Kai. But at the same time, he's not learning all the right lessons, and some of the stuff Johnny teaching him isn't good, but some of it still is good. So it makes Cobra Kai not seem like this truly evil thing. It's just like, you need to take away some of those things, but keep some of those things, because it's helping kids in some ways, but not helping them in other ways. And then you got Robbie, who of course is Johnny's son, which starts off in interesting dynamic there. And then he starts off as a bad kid, kind of like doing this stuff, but then he joins Daniel, and like Robbie starts becoming a better person through Daniel, through learning the more Miyagi-Do ways, which makes this dynamic really interesting, especially when you get to this final fight. And I think this is the perfect scenario to have this final fight, because on one side you have Miguel and Johnny, and the other side you got Robbie and Daniel. And at this point, you kind of want to see both of them succeed. Right off the bat, out of the beginning of the show, you want to see Miguel succeed, and you want to see him like win the championship. That would be something you definitely want from Miguel. But once they build him up at this point, because because like what they do with him in Cobra Kai's instructions and using some of the wrong way, at this point Miguel's kind of using his anger and letting out some of his bad side. So when you get to this final fight, you want Miguel to win from the beginning, but you're like, do I want this Miguel right now to win? And the opposite is with Robbie. At the beginning, you wouldn't want him to win, but then he starts to grow through Miyagi-Do, and Daniel, at this point, you want him to win. So as you see them fighting, you're like, I want Miguel to win, but at the same time, not right now, I don't. And I guess I want Robbie to win, and it makes for like this really interesting thing in your head. You're like, I kind of want both of them to win. And another thing is Johnny is, of course, you do want Johnny to win because you want him to finally succeed and do stuff, and you kind of like feel for him throughout this episode, him becoming a better person. So you want Johnny to win, you kind of want Miguel to win, and you want Robbie to win. And Daniel, he's kind of like a tiny bit arrogant at this point in some stuff, so you don't really want Daniel to win, but you still do like him. So it makes for like on each side there's one person you definitely want to succeed, and there's one person you kind of want to succeed. So it makes this really interesting like dilemma in your brain. You're like, who do I want to win? And it makes this outcome of this fight really interesting because like you don't really know who's gonna win at this point. There's like no obvious winner, because even it's not like there's one person who it'd be like a surprise if they won, or like they're both kind of underdogs too. So it's like it's not like there's one that you want to win, but at the same time, they're gonna go the easy route and let them to and make them win, so you want the person who you don't want to win. It's not like there's two obvious answers. Either way would be surprising and satisfying at the same time, not satisfying. It's really interesting. And then also, of course, because Robbie is Johnny's son, that puts a whole new dynamic in here, because Johnny, like, he wants Miguel to win and he wants Robbie to win, and it makes it really interesting for Johnny as a person. So I think that final fight hits on so many different levels. It's so interesting. And that's the show. This show should be just dumb, but it has plenty of layers that they really added on. It makes The Karate Kid a way better movie, and this delivers a very good season of TV. So now I'm going to talk about season 2. I did really enjoy the season, but I did think it was a step down from season 1. It wasn't as great. And I did have a couple like issues holding it back, which I'm going to get my negatives out of the way first. And those are, the characters are still mostly gray, like in the first season, this time they seem to focus more on the bad side of the characters instead of the good side, which I think is something they did good in the first season. So instead, this time it makes a bunch of the characters unlikable this season. Like people who were likable in the first season aren't likable this season, and just a bunch of the characters are just unlikable that you spend a bunch of time with. So I don't really like how they took that direction. Two specific examples are Hawk and Tori. Hawk, I really liked what they did with the first season, like the whole flip the switch thing worked, and you kind of felt for him. But then this season, he's basically just a bully the entire time. And you see that there's a little bit of good in him, but instead of focusing on balancing the good and bad, or just focusing more on the good with some bad, they do completely more the bad route. And then also this new character, Tori, also falls in that same camp. And I just can't enjoy those characters as much, especially when they're some of the main characters who aren't necessarily supposed to be villains. We're supposed to kind of be rooting for them. So I don't really think that worked. And then also, I don't like what they did with Cobra Kai this season, because they made them the villain, and they made Miyagi-Do, like, the good guys in this season. That's basically how it seemed in this season, which I don't like, because that takes away from Cobra Kai in the first season, kind of being like, kind of like having the grades, like, there's still like the teachings and stuff, kind of how I went in all the stuff with the first season. That kind of goes away when you treat them as the villains. And then there's a bunch of characters you like in there, like Miguel, but then he's kind of grouped in with the villains and stuff. And even though Miyagi-Do does some stuff, they're still treated like the heroes mostly, and Cobra Kai is treated like the villain, which I just makes it kind of annoying, because that takes away what made the first season so good, because they made Cobra Kai kind of redeemable in some ways. And then, also it doesn't make for an interesting dynamic, because these are two at odds, but you kind of side more on the Miyagi-Do, when I think they could have made it very even for back and forth, where you're siding on, like, going throughout the season, you're siding on different sides, and you really don't know who you want to win, kind of like with that Miguel and Robbie fight. So that thing kind of really held it back for me. And then also Miguel, my favorite character from season 1, is kind of sidelined this season. He was one of like the very main characters in the first season, and here he's still there, but he doesn't really do as much in that, and he doesn't have as many great moments and stuff. So that was kind of disappointing. And then also there's just this weird thing where they rehash something like an exact plot point from the first season, where in episode 9 of the first season, Johnny and Daniel become friends, and like, well, not fully friends, but they start connecting, and things like might seem like they're going well. And then the end of that episode, there's like a reveal, and then they're mad at each other again, and they're rightfully still on. And they redid that exact thing in episode 9. They go to the dinner, they start connecting, and things go well for them. And then there's something that they revealed at the end of episode 9 that makes them like split up again. Which, just rehashing that just seems like such a weird choice, and it kind of like, it takes away where you're doing something exactly the same as last season. Kind of seems lazy. Because I actually did like all the stuff when they're at dinner and stuff. That was a really fun conversation. But then they just redid the exact same thing. I don't know. But this season was still really funny. I'm now going to talk about the positives now. This season is still really funny. You got this great addition to Stingray, who you think, when he first shows up, you just think it's like a funny side character in one scene who steals the show. Oh, he's a funny side character. And then he shows up and gets a bigger role. Just great. And then I also love what they do with Johnny in this season. Kind of like, even though Cobra Kai, the kids are perceived to be evil, they do a good job of not making it him, because they're making it Kreese. So I really like how Johnny's like struggle with it. Like, he's trying to give Kreese a second chance. He's trying to turn a new leaf and kind of like trying to make things better within his life. But then bad things are still happening and stuff. And I think they do a really great dive into Johnny there. And then also, I do love this episode where you're focusing on Johnny going back with all his friends. I thought that was a really well handled episode, kind of like structured around this. One of his friends, the person who's like has cancer, and he actually had cancer in real life, which is really sad. And how they kind of treat him. They go on one last adventure with him and stuff, and like, he dies in the show, and sadly he died in real life, and I thought they handled that really well. And yeah, then once you get to this finale, I think the finale is really good. So of course they go big with this finale. There's like a full fight between the school and stuff, which, in like one side of it, the fight is awesome. The fights throughout the season, I think, are an improvement of season 1. I think that's one way to improve with the better fight choreography there. And this one probably has some of the best. It's like you got everyone fighting, all the payoffs and stuff, and this like crazy fight throughout the school and stuff. So in one way, yeah, that's awesome. But then like, is that a tiny bit over the top? Because, I don't know. Especially because the whole thing basically is around like someone kissing someone's boyfriend, where normally in high school, when a girl sees another girl kissing her boyfriend, she'll cry about it. But not Tori. She starts a school-wide fight and stuff. So maybe they took it a bit too far. But generally, I don't know. I go back and forth if I loved it or not, because I think it does kind of fit. But at the same time, if you think it went too far and got too unrealistic, I mean, they did have some teachers trying to come in and stop them, but then at one point it became too hard. So if you're in the camp like, this is just too over the top and too unrealistic, I understand it. Understand where you're coming from. If you're like, oh, this is just awesome, great finale, like, yes, it's also a great finale. I don't know. I really am going back and forth on that, but I'm definitely leaning towards the side. It was a really good finale and a great way to end it. So yeah. And then, yeah, of course, this episode also ends with a bunch of different cliffhangers in here. Like, I think it's going to make season 3 really good, hopefully, with all these things that they set up there. So yeah, overall, I think it is a really solid season. I might have seemed negative, but there's still lots of aspects I did really like about it. I still found the pacing to be good. I still enjoyed myself while watching it. It's just I think it's easier sometimes when you're like, especially when I was writing this, I'm like, why did I not like this as much? And I found all the reasons there, and it's easier to focus on the negatives when I was just trying to find them, because I was trying to find out why I like this less. But still a really solid season.
What did you think would happen?
So yeah, it wasn't really much. It was like the actual YouTube video is like 40 seconds, but really the only like actual footage part is only like 18 seconds. So it's really just a tease. And this is actually our second tease for season 3. As like when they were first putting on Netflix, they released like a Cobra Kai coming to Netflix trailer, which actually was just a really well done trailer for the first 2 seasons. And at the end they're like season 3 coming, and had a little tease. Now for that one, so I've only seen the first Karate Kid. I have not seen any of the sequels, but apparently, like you hear the voice of someone and people think it's someone from the Karate Kid 2. So I guess I'm gonna have to watch the Karate Kid 2 before Cobra Kai season 3, if that is true and stuff. And you get like this tease with Daniel. So yeah, and then also with this one you do get a lot more here, but still it's only 18 seconds, just quick little flashes, and you can kind of guess what's going to happen and where things are going to go. You see like, you see Robbie like in jail, it seems like. Johnny has a beard when Miguel wakes up, so I guess that means at least like, it's at least, well, I don't know, a couple days or so from like when he gets knocked out to when he wakes up, and stuff. I wonder how long that will be, but we do see him wake up and stuff. And then we get a couple other shots of a bunch of the other characters that you can't really make out exactly what's gonna go on in here. But yeah, just seems really interesting. Oh, I also think you see Johnny in jail, which I don't know why he'd be there, but not a whole lot, but it still gets me more excited. And also they announced here that season 4 is coming out. They're making a season 4, and season 3 is coming out in January 8th, so very soon. So like pit those things together. I'm very excited about the future of this show. So that is my review for season 1 and 2 of Cobra Kai, and my reaction and thoughts on season 3 trailer of Cobra Kai. You know it's a special video when I have worn, like, I filmed it over 4 different days, and I'm wearing different shirts on different times throughout the video. That's how you know it's a good video. But yeah, basically, yeah, have been really busy and I haven't had the chance to film it all in once, so filmed it 4 different times, different parts. But yeah, I have been pretty busy, especially with school starting back up, so that's why I haven't posted a video in a little while. I'm hoping to get in the once a week videos. That's my goal. But I don't know how school will be in life. But yeah, comment down below what you think about Cobra Kai. Please like and subscribe, and keep watching Neek.